When basketball legend Michael Jordan returns to Laney High School, no one recognizes him. Not even the principal. The 62-year-old NBA superstar decides to keep his identity a secret, telling everyone he's just Mike, a former student visiting his old school. As he tours the hallways, Michael sees his own jersey and trophies in display cases, while the principal explains that Michael Jordan is their most famous student. She has no idea she's talking to the legend himself. When Michael watches the struggling basketball team practice, he feels a connection to these young players, especially their captain Jamal, who reminds Michael of himself at that age. Without revealing who he really is, Michael begins coaching the team, teaching them lessons about basketball and life that transform them from losers into winners. But as the team improves and starts winning tournament games, people begin to recognize the mysterious coach. What will happen when everyone discovers the truth? And why does the principal seem to be hiding a secret of her own? The answer will surprise everyone, especially Michael Jordan himself. The sleek black Bentley slowed as it approached the familiar street corner. Behind the wheel, Michael Jordan adjusted his grip, feeling a strange flutter in his stomach. She, 62 years old, he'd faced countless opponents on basketball courts around the world, closed billion-dollar business deals, and stood before roaring crowds of thousands. Yet, returning to Laney High School after all these years made his palms sweat like a rookie at his first playoff game. "You sure about this, MJ?" asked Keith, his longtime friend and driver, from the passenger seat. "We could call ahead, make proper arrangements." Michael shook his head. "No, I want to do this quietly." He pulled into the visitor parking lot, noticing how different yet somehow the same the school looked. New buildings had sprouted up beside the original structures, and fresh landscaping brightened the grounds, but the heart of the place remained. "I won't be long," Michael said, adjusting the plain navy baseball cap on his head. "Just want to take a look around." Keith nodded, understanding. "I'll wait here." Michael stepped out of the car, feeling the coastal Carolina air hit his face. It was early May, and the temperature sat comfortably in the 70s. Perfect basketball weather. He'd chosen a simple outfit today: dark jeans, a light gray polo shirt, and a pair of sneakers that weren't Air Jordans. The baseball cap was pulled low, not quite hiding his face, but making him less immediately recognizable. "Gracias," he walked toward the main entrance. Memories flooded back. There, beyond the new administration building, stood the old gym where he'd spent countless hours perfecting his jump shot. The football field where he'd run sprints to build endurance remained in the same spot, though it now sported synthetic turf instead of natural grass. Everything was shinier, newer, but the bones of his past remained. A group of students passed by, laughing and talking. None of them gave him a second glance. Michael smiled to himself. These kids had been born long after he'd retired from basketball. To them, he was probably just a face on old highlight reels or a logo on their sneakers. The main entrance had a security system now, something that hadn't existed in his day. Michael pressed the buzzer and waited. "Can I help you?" asked a friendly female voice through the speaker. "I'm here to visit," Michael replied. "Former student." The door buzzed, and Michael pulled it open. Inside, the hallway gleamed with polished floors and fresh paint. Trophy cases lined the walls, filled with the achievements of generations of students. Michael resisted the urge to search for his own name and continued to the main office. Behind the front desk sat a young woman with bright eyes and a welcoming smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" "Morning," Michael said. "I was hoping to take a look around." I graduated from Laney a long time ago, just passing through town and feeling nostalgic. Of course, we just need you to sign in and get a visitor's badge. She slid a digital tablet across the counter. Your name, please? Michael hesitated for just a moment. Mike. Mike Jordan. The young woman, her nameplate read Ms. Daniels, didn't bat an eye as she typed something into her computer. And may I see your ID, Mr. Jordan? Michael produced his driver's license. Ms. Daniels glanced at it, nodded, and handed it back without any sign of recognition. She then printed a visitor sticker and handed it to him. Principal Wilson likes to greet all our visitors personally. She should be available in just a moment if you'd like to wait. That'd be fine, Michael said, taking a seat in one of the office chairs. On the wall opposite him hung photos of various school events. His eyes drifted to a large graduation picture, searching for familiar faces among the teachers. None remained from his time. Everyone he'd known had moved on, retired, or passed away. He felt a twinge of melancholy at this realization. A door opened, and a woman in her 50s emerged. She had short, silver-streaked hair, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses, and carried herself with confident authority. Mr. Jordan, I'm Darlene Wilson, principal here at Laney High. She extended, her hand with a warm smile. Welcome back to your alma mater. Michael stood and shook her hand. Thank you. It's been a while. Principal Wilson looked at him with polite interest, but no recognition in her eyes. Ms. Daniels mentioned you're a former student? What year did you graduate, if you don't mind my asking? Class of 1981, Michael replied, watching her face for any reaction. Principal Wilson nodded. Well, before my time, I'm afraid. I've only been principal here for the past year, but I've been in the district for about 15. What brings you back to visit us today? Michael shrugged lightly. Just passing through town. Thought I'd see how the old place has changed. Would you like a tour? I have about 20 minutes before my next meeting. That would be great, if it's not too much trouble. Principal Wilson led him out of the office and into the main hallway. Laney has changed quite a bit since the 80s, I imagine. We've added the science wing in 2010, and the new gymnasium was completed just 5 years ago. As they walked, students moved between classes. A few glanced curiously at Michael, but most were too absorbed in their conversations or phones to pay much attention to another adult visitor in the hallways. The original building has been renovated several times, Principal Wilson continued, pointing out features as they walked. But we've tried to preserve some of the historical elements. The floors in this section are the original hardwood, just refinished. Michael nodded, looking down at the gleaming wood beneath his feet. Had he walked this exact spot as a teenager? Had his dreams of basketball greatness taken shape here, on these very floorboards? Our academic programs have expanded significantly, Principal Wilson said, with evident pride. We now offer 23 AP courses and have a STEM magnet program that draws students from across the county. That's impressive, Michael said, sincerely. What about the basketball program? Principal Wilson's expression shifted slightly. We have a strong athletics tradition here, of course. Basketball has had its ups and downs in recent years. Coach Bryant is working hard with the boys' team. They're rebuilding this season. They turned a corner, and Michael found himself facing a large trophy case. Inside gleamed golden statues, plaques, and team photos from various sports across the decades. In the center, impossible to miss, was a basketball jersey framed behind glass. Number 23. Principal Wilson noticed him staring. "That's our most famous former student," she explained. "Michael taught you that Jordan played here before becoming an NBA star. We're very proud of that connection to basketball history." Michael felt a strange sensation wash over him: amusement, disbelief, and something like relief. She truly didn't recognize him. "Impressive kid," he said simply. "Indeed," Principal Wilson agreed, completely unaware she was speaking to the man himself. "His legacy inspires our students to pursue excellence. There's a famous story about how he was actually cut from the varsity team his sophomore year, only to come back stronger and more determined. We use that as a lesson about perseverance." Michael fought back a smile. "Good lesson." As they continued down the hallway, Michael felt an unexpected lightness in his step. For the first time in decades, he was walking these halls not as a legend, not as an icon, but simply as Mike, a former student revisiting his past. No autographs to sign, no photos to pose for, no weight of expectations on his shoulders. And, somehow, that felt like the greatest gift of all. "Shall we continue?" Principal Wilson asked, gesturing down the corridor. Michael nodded, still processing the strange freedom of anonymity. "Please, I'd like to see as much as possible." They walked past classrooms where teachers lectured and students bent over notebooks or tapped on tablets. Through the windows, Michael caught glimpses of smart boards and computer stations, a far cry from the chalkboards and overhead projectors of his day. "Our teaching methods have evolved quite a bit since the 80s, Principal Wilson explained. "Every student now has access to digital learning tools, and we've implemented project-based curricula in many subjects. Kids these days have it easy," Michael joked. "We had to actually look things up in encyclopedias." Principal Wilson laughed. "I remember those days too, though I suspect some skills were stronger back then, like memorization and patience." They passed a large mural painted on the wall, depicting various scenes from the school's history. Michael spotted a basketball section that showed silhouettes of players through the decades. One unmistakable figure soared through the air, arm extended in what had become known worldwide as the Jumpman pose. "The art students created this 3 years ago," Principal Wilson said. "They researched all the notable achievements in Laney's history." "They did a nice job," Michael replied, fighting the urge to point out that the artist had captured his dunking form accurately. As they turned another corner, a classroom door opened and students poured into the hallway. A tall boy in a Laney Buccaneers basketball jersey bumped accidentally into Michael. "Sorry, sir," the boy said, glancing up. For a brief moment, Michael thought he saw a flicker of recognition in the boy's eyes, but it passed so quickly he couldn't be sure. "No problem," Michael responded. The boy nodded and hurried off to join his friends. "That was Jamal Taylor," Principal Wilson said, "captain of our varsity basketball team. Talented player, but struggling to find his leadership voice." Michael watched the boy disappear down the hall, reminded of his own teenage uncertainty. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the skill, it's believing in yourself enough to use it. Principal Wilson gave him an appraising look. "You sound like you've had some experience with that." "A little," Michael admitted. "I played some ball in my day, nothing special." They continued past the library, which Principal Wilson proudly noted had been expanded to include a digital media center. Michael peered through the glass doors, noticing students lounging in comfortable chairs with laptops and tablets. "What brings you back to Wilmington after all these years, Mr. Jordan?" Principal Wilson asked as they walked. "Family business," Michael replied vaguely. "And I've been thinking lately about where I came from, the places and people that shaped me." Principal Wilson nodded understandingly. Many alumni feel that pull to reconnect with their roots, especially at your stage of life. "My stage?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Well, you mentioned graduating in '81, so I assume you're in your early 60s, she said. "Many people find that's when they start reflecting on their journey." Michael couldn't argue with that. His recent birthday had indeed prompted thoughts about legacy and beginnings. His children were adults now, his grandchildren growing fast. The business empire he'd built after basketball continued to thrive. Yet lately, he'd felt a nagging sense that something was missing, some connection to the hungry, determined boy he'd once been. "You're not wrong," he conceded. "Time has a way of making you look backward as much as forward." They approached a hallway lined with photographs of student athletes. Placards identified state champions and standouts in various sports across the decades. Michael slowed his pace, scanning the faces. "Here's our wall of champions," Principal Wilson explained, "students who brought special recognition to Laney." Michael stopped before a faded photograph of the 1980-81 basketball team. There he was, front row, lanky and serious-faced, not yet filled out to his adult height, but already radiating intensity. "That was a good team," he said quietly. Principal Wilson leaned in to look. "Oh yes, that was Jordan's team. They had an impressive season." "Made it to the state playoffs," Michael added. Principal Wilson glanced at him. "You have a good memory. Some things stick with you." They moved on, passing more displays of student achievements, academic awards, art contest, winners, robotics competitions. Michael appreciated how the school celebrated excellence in all its forms, not just athletics. "We're coming up on the new gymnasium now," Principal Wilson said, as they approached a set of double doors. It was named in honor of our most distinguished basketball alumnus, of course. The doors bore a large sign reading Jordan Gymnasium in the school's colors. Michael felt a strange flutter in his chest at seeing his name emblazoned there. "Must be something, having a gym named after you," he remarked. "I imagine so," Principal Wilson agreed, "though I suspect Michael Jordan has so many things named after him now that one high school gym might not register." Michael suppressed a smile. "You never know. First places can mean the most." From beyond the doors came the distinctive sounds of basketball practice. Sneakers squeaking on polished wood, the rhythmic bounce of balls, coaches' voices calling out instructions. "Sounds like the team is practicing," Michael observed. Principal TV'd. Wilson checked her watch. "Yes, Coach Bryant holds practices during 5th period. Would you like to take a look?" Michael felt that familiar pull, the magnetic attraction of a basketball court that had defined his life. "I'd like that very much." Principal Wilson pushed, opened the doors, and together they stepped into the gleaming new gymnasium where young players chased their dreams on the hardwood below. The gymnasium was bathed in natural light from large windows that lined the upper walls. Polished hardwood gleamed under the bright LED fixtures, and modern scoreboards hung at either end. The space was easily twice the size of the gym Michael had played in as a teenager. Practice was in full swing. About 15 boys in Laney practice uniforms ran drills under the watchful eye of a broad-shouldered man in his 40s. Michael immediately recognized the drill, a 3-man weave ending with a layup. But something was off. The players moved without precision, their timing disjointed, passes sloppy. "That's Coach Terrell Bryant," Principal Wilson explained, keeping her voice low as they stood at the back of the bleachers. "Former college player. He's been with us 3 seasons now." Michael nodded, his eyes tracking the movements on the court. The tall boy they'd seen in the hallway, Jamal, received a pass and drove toward the basket, but his layup rattled off the rim. The coach blew his whistle. "Taylor, you're rushing it. Take your time and focus on your form," Coach Bryant called. "Out." Frustration edged his voice. Jamal nodded, but Michael could see the tension in the boy's shoulders. He recognized that. Look, a young player trying too hard, pressing instead of flowing. "The team hasn't been performing as well as we'd hoped," Principal Wilson said with a sigh. "We haven't won a championship in nearly a decade." "What's the issue?" Michael asked, his eyes never leaving the court. Principal Wilson considered this. "Talent is there, work ethic too, but something's missing. Coach Bryant says they don't play as a unit, and nobody steps up in crucial moments." Michael understood immediately. Leadership, confidence. The intangibles that turned good players into winners. The drill broke down again when a pass sailed over a player's head. Coach Bryant's whistle shrilled through the gym. "Let's take 5, he called out. "Get some water." As the players dispersed toward the sidelines, Coach Bryant noticed the visitors. He said something to his assistant coach and jogged over. "Principal Wilson," he greeted her with a nod. "Didn't expect to see you at practice." "Just giving a tour to one of our alumni," she replied, gesturing to Michael. "Mr. Jordan was a student here back in the early '80s. Coach Bryant extended his hand. "Terrell Bryant. Always good to meet a Laney alum." Michael shook it firmly. "Mike, nice to meet you, Coach." If Bryant recognized him, he didn't show it. The coach's attention was clearly divided, his eyes darting back to his players who were gathered around the water cooler. "How's the season shaping up?" Michael asked. "Coach?" Bryant's expression tightened. "Started strong, but we've dropped our last 4 games. Boys are losing confidence." Michael nodded understandingly. "Mind if I watch for a bit?" "Not at all," Coach Bryant replied, then turned to Principal Wilson. "You staying too, Principal?" She checked her watch. "I'm afraid I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Mr. Jordan, would you like me to have someone else show you around after you're done here?" "I think I'll be fine," Michael said. "The gym was what I wanted to see most anyway. Thank you for the tour." "It was my pleasure," she said with a smile. "Please stop by the office before you leave to sign out, and come back any time." After Principal Wilson departed, Michael moved to the bottom row of the bleachers. Coach Bryant blew his whistle, and the players gathered around him. Michael watched as the coach diagrammed a play on his tablet, the boys leaning in to see. But something was missing in their body language. Some players stood with arms crossed. Others fidgeted restlessly. Only a few, including Jamal, seemed fully engaged. The whistle blew again, and the players set up to run the play. 5 on 5. Starters against reserves. The execution was mechanical, lacking fluidity. When a defender jumped the passing lane for a steal, the offensive set fell apart completely. Coach Bryant stopped the action. "That's not what we practiced. Williams, you need to set that screen harder. Rodriguez, wait for the screen before you cut." The players reset, but the second attempt wasn't much better. Michael felt a familiar itch in his fingers, the desire to jump in, to demonstrate. Basketball had been his language for so long that watching these struggling players was like hearing someone butcher a favorite song. After several more failed attempts, Coach Bryant called the team together again. As he spoke to them, Michael noticed Jamal standing slightly apart from his teammates, arms crossed, defensively. Their captain was isolating himself. Not a good sign. When practice ended 20 minutes later, the players trudged toward the locker room. None of them looked satisfied with the day's work. Coach Bryant remained on the court, jotting notes on his tablet with sharp, frustrated strokes. Michael stood and approached him. "Tough practice?" The coach looked up, seeming almost surprised that Michael was still there. "Yeah, been a tough season, honestly." "Mind if I ask you something?" Michael said. "Shoot. What's your best player's biggest weakness?" Coach Bryant didn't hesitate. "Taylor. And it's between his ears. Kid's got Division I talent, but high school confidence. Tries to do too much himself." Michael nodded. It confirmed what he'd observed. "Sounds familiar." "Yeah?" Coach Bryant raised an eyebrow. "I was that kid once," Michael admitted. "Thought I had to carry the team on my shoulders." Coach Bryant studied him with new interest. "You played?" "A little," Michael said, with his characteristic small smile. "What if I offered some advice to your players? Sometimes a new voice helps." The coach hesitated, glancing toward the locker room where his team had disappeared. "No offense, but what could you tell them that I haven't?" "Maybe nothing," Michael acknowledged. "But sometimes it's not what you say, it's who says it." Coach Bryant scratched his chin thoughtfully. "You were here when Jordan played, right? Back in the 80s? "You could say that." "The guys might get a kick out of hearing from someone from that era," Coach Bryant mused. "You coming back tomorrow?" "I could," Michael replied. "Practice starts at 2:30. The coach extended his hand again. "Appreciate your interest, Mr. Jordan." As they shook hands, Michael noticed the assistant coach staring at him from across the gym, a dawning look of recognition on his face. The younger man started walking toward them, eyes wide. "I should get going," Michael said quickly. "See? You tomorrow, coach." He turned and walked briskly toward the exit, pulling his cap lower. As the gymnasium doors swung shut behind him, Michael heard the assistant coach's excited voice. "Coach, do you know who that was?" In the empty hallway, Michael smiled to himself. Tomorrow would be interesting. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with business deals or brand management. Here, he wasn't a billionaire or a global icon. He was just Mike, a former player with something to offer. As he made his way back toward the main office to sign out, his mind was already filling with drills and exercises he could show the team. Tomorrow, he would do more than just visit his past. He would connect with it. The next day, Michael arrived at Laney High School at precisely 2:15 p.m. He'd traded yesterday's casual polo for a simple black t-shirt and athletic pants. In his U-Hoodie car's trunk sat a gym bag containing basketball shoes he hadn't worn in public for years. Not his signature brand, but plain high tops that wouldn't draw attention. At the front office, Ms. Daniels greeted him with the same friendly smile as before. "Back again, Mr. Jordan. Principal Wilson mentioned you might return." "Just wanted to see a bit more of the old school," Michael replied, signing the visitor log. "Is it all right if I observe basketball practice again?" "Of course. You know the way to the gym?" Michael nodded, clipping on his visitor badge. As he walked through the now familiar hallways, he noticed more students than yesterday. A few glanced his way, but most were absorbed in their conversations or phones. One boy did a double take as Michael passed, nudging his friend and whispering something, but Michael kept moving. When he reached the gymnasium, practice hadn't started yet. Players were shooting around, some stretching on the sidelines. Coach Bryant stood with his assistant, the same one who had seemed to recognize Michael yesterday, reviewing notes on a clipboard. Michael slipped in quietly and took a seat on the bottom row of bleachers. He unzipped his gym bag and began changing into his basketball shoes. The assistant coach spotted him first, nudging Coach Bryant and pointing discreetly. The head coach looked up, nodded in acknowledgement, and blew his whistle. "Circle up, gentlemen." Chanti players gathered at center court. Michael watched as Coach Bryant addressed them, occasionally gesturing in his direction. Some players turned to look, curiosity evident on their faces. Jamal Taylor, the team captain, crossed his arms and frowned slightly. After a brief huddle, Coach Bryant jogged over to Michael. "Glad you made it, Mr. Jordan. I told the guys we have a visitor who wants to share some basketball knowledge. There, all yours for the next 15 minutes, if that works." Michael stood, feeling a familiar pre-game flutter in his stomach. "That works fine. Thanks, Coach." As he approached the gathered players, Michael noted their expressions: curiosity, skepticism, boredom. These teenagers had no idea who he really was, and that was exactly how he wanted it. For now. "Afternoon, guys," he began, his voice carrying easily across the gym. "Coach Bryant was kind enough to let me speak with you today. My name's Mike. I'm a Laney alum, and basketball has been a big part of my life." "You played here?" asked a short, wiry guard near the front. "I did," Michael confirmed. "A long time. Ago now." "Were you any good?" called another player from the back of the group. Several teammates snickered. Michael smiled. "I was decent. Got better after high school." Jamal Taylor, standing slightly apart from the others, sized Michael up with undisguised skepticism. "No offense, sir, but what can you teach us that Coach hasn't already?" The question wasn't asked respectfully, but Michael recognized the frustration behind it. He'd been that same cocky, defensive teenager once. "Fair question," Michael acknowledged. "Maybe nothing. But sometimes hearing something from a different voice makes it stick. And sometimes..." He picked up a basketball from the rack nearby. "Seeing is better than hearing." Without warning, Michael dribbled twice, stepped back, and launched a perfect jump shot from the free throw line. The ball arced gracefully and swished through the net. Despite his age, the form was unmistakable. The slight lean, the extended arm, the distinctive flick of the wrist that had been immortalized in countless photographs. The gym fell silent. Even Coach Bryant and his assistant stopped their conversation to watch. Michael retrieved the ball and turned back to the players. "Basketball's just as mental as it is physical. That's something most players don't understand until they've been at it a while." He moved to the three-point line and sank another shot, smooth and effortless. "I watched your practice yesterday," he continued, bouncing the ball slowly. "You've got talent, but you're not playing together, and you're not playing with confidence." Several players shifted uncomfortably. Jamal's eyes narrowed. "You disagree?" Michael asked him directly. Jamal hesitated, then spoke. "We're trying, but trying isn't winning games." "Trying without direction isn't," Michael agreed. "But trying with purpose is how champions are made." He held the ball out toward Jamal. "You're the captain, right? How about a little one-on-one?" A ripple of excitement went through the team. Jamal looked surprised, then wary. "1 game to 5 points, Michael proposed. "You score on me, your team gets to run 1 less suicide drill today." He glanced at Coach Bryant, who nodded his agreement. "I score on you. You do what I say for the rest of practice. No questions asked." Jamal looked around at his teammates. who were now fully engaged. A few nodded encouragingly. With teenage bravado masking his uncertainty, Jamal stepped forward. "You're on, old man." The players spread out, forming a circle around center court. Coach Bryant folded his arms, watching with interest. Michael removed his visitor badge and handed the ball to Jamal. "Your ball first." Jamal dribbled cautiously at the top of the O, he sizing up his opponent. Michael stood relaxed, knees slightly bent, arms loose at his sides. His posture seemed casual, but his eyes were intensely focused. Making his move, Jamal crossed over quickly to his left and accelerated toward the basket. Michael pivoted smoothly, staying with him step for step. When Jamal rose for a layup, Michael's hand appeared from nowhere, cleanly blocking the shot and catching the ball in one fluid motion. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he picked up his phone and saw several missed calls from his business manager, 2 from his oldest son, and a text from Keith asking how the school visit had gone. Michael replied to Keith with a brief message. "Going back tomorrow. Need you to bring me something from the storage unit." The next morning, Michael arrived at Laney High carrying a weathered duffel bag. Inside were treasures from his past. Dog-eared notebooks filled with plays and drills, practice shorts from his early Bulls days, and a pair of original Air Jordans that had never been released to the public. These weren't for show. They were tools for the lessons he planned to share. When he walked into the gym after signing in at the office, the atmosphere was noticeably different. Players who had been shooting around stopped to watch him enter. Coach Bryant approached, with an extended hand and a genuine smile. "They've been asking when you'd arrive," the coach said. "I've never seen them this eager for practice." Michael set his bag on the bleachers. "Let's not waste that energy then." Today's session began, with Michael gathering the team in a circle at center court. He sat on the floor with them, breaking down the invisible barrier between teacher and students. "Yesterday, I showed you some moves," he began. "Today, I want to talk about something more important, the mindset of a champion." He pulled out one of the notebooks from his bag, its pages yellow with age, and opened it to a section labeled Mental Game. "When I was not much older than you guys, I started writing down lessons I was learning. Not just plays or strategies, but thoughts about what separates good players from great ones." He read a passage he'd written during his second season with Chicago. "Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships." Jamal, sitting directly across from Michael, leaned forward. "Did that work for you? The writing part?" "It did," Michael confirmed. "Helped me process what I was learning. Made me accountable to myself." He handed the notebook to Jamal. "Take a look." As Jamal flipped through the pages, his expression shifted from curiosity to something deeper. Recognition, perhaps, of the dedication documented in those handwritten notes. "You guys each have individual skills," Michael continued, addressing the whole team. "But you're not playing as a unit. Basketball is like having a conversation. You need to learn each other's voices, rhythms, tendencies." He stood up, motioning for the players to do the same. "Today, we're going to work on awareness, knowing where your teammates are without looking." For the next hour, Michael ran drills focused entirely on court awareness and communication. Players practiced passing with peripheral vision, calling out defensive switches, and moving in coordinated patterns. When someone made a mistake, Michael didn't criticize. He demonstrated the correct approach and explained the reasoning behind it. "Why is this stuff so important?" asked Rodriguez, a junior guard with quick hands but inconsistent decision-making. Because when the pressure's on, you fall back on habits, Michael explained. In the fourth quarter of a tight game, you don't have time to think. Your body and mind have to know what to do instinctively. He pulled Jamal and 4 other starters to center court for a demonstration. Jamal, you've been trying to do too much yourself. I get it. You want to win, and you know you've got skills. But look at your teammates. Michael positioned himself behind Jamal, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders and physically turning him to face each of his teammates one by one. Williams here has a quick first step and can finish at the rim. Rodriguez reads passing lanes better than anyone on the team. Chen has the best shooting form I've seen in a high schooler in years. And Thomas is the kind of defender who can disrupt an entire offense. Jamal nodded slowly, seeing his teammates through new eyes. Your job as captain isn't to be the best player, it's to make everyone around you better, Michael said, his voice carrying across the hushed gym. That's what leadership looks like. Something clicked for Jamal in that moment. His posture changed subtly, shoulders straightening, as if a burden had been lifted. For the remainder of practice, Michael focused on Jamal's role as a facilitator rather than just a scorer. He showed him how to create opportunities for teammates, when to assert himself, and when to step back. The other players responded immediately, their energy and execution improving as they felt more included in the offensive flow. Coach Bryant watched from the sideline, occasionally adding reinforcement to Michael's instructions, but mostly observing with undisguised appreciation. His assistant coach filmed portions of the practice on a tablet, creating reference material for future sessions. As practice wound down, Michael gathered the team for a final talk. Sweat glistened on their foreheads, but their eyes were clear and attentive. Even the players who had been skeptical. Yesterday now hung on his every word. Basketball gave me everything, Michael told them, his voice softer than it had been during the drills. But before the championships, before the contracts and the shoes and all of that, it was just the game. The pure joy of improvement. The satisfaction of seeing hard work pay off. He looked at each player in turn. Don't lose sight of that joy. No matter how far basketball takes you, whether it's college, the pros, or just memories you'll carry through life, remember why you started playing in the first place. As the team broke huddle and headed for the locker rooms, Jamal lingered. Behind Mr. Mike, he said, using the simple name Michael had given them. Can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. You said you were cut from varsity. How did you handle that disappointment? Michael smiled, recognizing the deeper question beneath the surface. This wasn't just about basketball history. It was about Jamal's own struggles with expectations and fear of failure. I cried, Michael admitted honestly. Then I used that pain as fuel. Every time I wanted to quit. During a hard practice, I remembered how it felt to see my name missing from that list. He placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. Failure isn't the end, unless you let it be. It's just a step in the journey. Jamal nodded, absorbing the words. Will you be back tomorrow? Count on it, Michael replied. Over the next few days, Michael fell into a comfortable routine. He'd arrive at Laney High shortly after lunch, sign in at the front office, where Ms. Daniels now greeted him by name, and make his way to the gymnasium. Principal Wilson occasionally spotted him in the hallways and would stop for brief, friendly conversations, still completely unaware of his true identity. The team's response to his coaching exceeded even Michael's expectations. Each day brought visible improvements in their cohesion and confidence. Coach Bryant had seamlessly integrated Michael into the practice structure, often stepping back to allow him to lead entire segments. On Thursday afternoon, Michael arrived to find the gym unusually quiet. Only Jamal was there, shooting free throws with mechanical precision. "Where is everyone?" Michael asked, setting down his duffel bag. "Early dismissal for teacher meetings," Jamal explained, catching the rebound. "Practice is canceled, but I got permission to use the gym." Michael checked his watch. "So you're spending your free afternoon shooting hoops instead of hanging out with friends?" Jamal shrugged. "Need to work on my free throws. I'm only hitting 70%. Michael smiled at the familiar dedication. He'd spent countless solitary hours in gyms throughout his career, perfecting elements of his game that others might have considered already good enough. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all, sir." They fell into a rhythm, each taking turns at the line. After about 20 minutes of comfortable silence, punctuated only by the sound of bouncing balls and swishing nets, Jamal spoke. "Mr. Mike, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think I'm good enough to play college ball?" Michael considered the question, recognizing its importance to the young player. "Based on skill alone? Absolutely. Division I potential, without question." Jamal nodded, processing, "This? My dad says the same thing, but what? But I'm not sure it's enough." Jamal retrieved his ball and held it between his hands, staring at the worn leather. There are thousands of kids with Division I potential. Only a few make it. Michael moved to the bleachers and sat down, motioning for Jamal to join him. The boy did, keeping the basketball in his lap like a security blanket. "What's really on your mind, Jamal? This isn't just about basketball, is it?" Jamal hesitated, then shook his head. "My family doesn't have money for college. A scholarship is pretty much my only shot. My dad works 2 jobs already, and my mom—" He paused. "My mom's been sick for a while. Medical bills piling up." Michael nodded, understanding the weight on this 17-year-old's shoulders. It wasn't just about basketball dreams. It was about practical realities and family responsibilities. "That's a lot to carry," Michael said quietly. "Yeah." Jamal bounced the ball once between his feet. "That's why I've been pressing so hard. Why I haven't been the leader the team needs. Every game feels like my future depends on it." "I understand that pressure," Michael said. "Different circumstances, but similar feelings." "Really?" Jamal looked skeptical. "You seem like you've got it all figured out." Michael laughed softly. "Now, maybe. But at your age, I was a bundle of ambition and insecurity, desperate to prove myself." He told Jamal about his own family's modest background, about working at gas stations growing up, about the sacrifices his parents made. He spoke about the pressure he'd put on himself, not just to succeed, but to excel beyond what anyone thought possible. "The thing is," Michael continued, "pressure can crush you or forge you. The difference is what you focus on." "What do you mean?" "When you're thinking about the scholarship, the future, all the things that could go wrong, that's when you play tight. When you focus on the game itself, on the pure joy of the moment, that's when your true ability shines through." Jamal nodded slowly. "Coach Bryant says something similar, but it's easier said than done." "True," Michael acknowledged. "It takes practice, just like any skill." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Jamal spoke again. My dad used to talk about Michael Jordan all the time. Said watching him play was like seeing the impossible become possible. Michael felt a strange flutter in his chest. Pride mingled with nostalgia, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Your dad sounds like a wise man," he said carefully. "He is." Jamal looked down at the basketball in his hands. "He has this old poster of Jordan in our garage where he works out. Sometimes I catch him just staring at it, like it reminds him of something important." Michael swallowed, unexpectedly moved. Throughout his career, he'd known his play inspired people, but hearing this specific, intimate example, a father finding strength in his image during difficult times, touched him deeply. "Basketball can be more than a game," Michael said softly. "It can be hope, a promise that hard work and dedication mean something." Jamal looked up at him. "That's exactly what my dad says." Michael stood, needing to move suddenly. "Let's work on those free throws some more. I've got a technique that might help your percentage." For the next hour, they focused on the precise mechanics of the free throw: foot position, hand placement, breath control, visualization. Michael shared the rituals he'd developed during his career, the mental techniques he'd used to maintain consistency under pressure. As they wrapped up, Jamal's free throws had already improved noticeably, but Michael sensed the session had given the young player something more valuable than basketball skills, a reminder of why he loved the game in the first place. "Same time tomorrow?" Michael asked as they collected the basketballs. "Actually, we have an away game tomorrow. First round of the regional tournament." "Right. Coach Bryant mentioned that." Jamal hesitated, then asked, "Would you come? I know it's about an hour drive, but having you, there would mean a lot to the team." Michael considered this. He'd planned to keep his involvement restricted to private practices, minimizing the risk of wider recognition. But the earnestness in Jamal's request was hard to refuse. "I'll see what I can do," he said. "No promises, but I'll try." Jamal's face brightened. "That would be awesome, Mr. Mike. The guys would be so pumped if you showed up." As they walked out of the gym together, Michael realized something had shifted. He'd come to Laney High seeking a connection to his past, a brief nostalgic visit to his roots. Instead, he'd found something unexpected, a meaningful bond with a young player whose struggles and aspirations mirrored his own from decades ago. The past and present had fused into something new, something neither could have anticipated, but both clearly needed. "Jamal," Michael said as they reached the parking lot, "regardless of whether I make it to the game tomorrow, remember what we talked about. Play with joy. The rest will follow." Jamal nodded solemnly. "I will, sir. I promise." The following day, Michael debated whether to attend Laney's tournament game. His original plan for a quiet, anonymous visit to his old school had already evolved into something more involved than he'd anticipated. Appearing at a public game would increase the chances of being recognized. Still, he found himself thinking about Jamal and the team throughout the morning. By early afternoon, he'd made his decision. He called Keith. "Need you to drive me to Wilson High School. Laney's playing there at 5:30. "Going public with this now?" Keith asked. "Not if I can help it," Michael replied. "But I told those kids I'd try to be there." At 5:15, Keith pulled their car into the visitor section of Wilson High's parking lot. The gymnasium was already buzzing with activity. Parents arriving, cheerleaders, practicing, the distinct sound of pre-game warm-ups audible even from outside. Hat and glasses, Keith suggested, holding out a simple black cap and dark sunglasses. Michael nodded, putting them on. It wasn't much of a disguise, but it might buy him some time before being recognized. "I'll text when I need pickup. Hopefully I can watch the game without causing a scene." Inside, Michael paid for his ticket and slipped into the gymnasium, finding a seat in the top corner of the bleachers. The stands were about half full, with most spectators on the home team's side. Michael spotted a small but vocal section of Laney supporters across the court, many wearing the school's blue and gold colors. On the court, both teams were finishing their warm-ups. Michael easily spotted Jamal leading. The Laney players threw stretches. The boy seemed more focused than Michael had seen him in practice, his usual nervous energy channeled into purposeful movement. As players returned to their benches for final instructions, Jamal looked up, scanning the crowd. Michael gave a small wave, and Jamal's face broke into a brief smile of recognition before he refocused on Coach Bryant's pre-game talk. The game began with Laney winning the jump ball. Immediately, Michael could see the difference in their play. The disjointed, individualistic tendencies he'd observed in practice had been replaced by fluid movement and clear communication. Jamal, in particular, played with a newfound balance, assertive when needed, but willingly deferring to teammates in better positions. By halftime, Laney led 32-28. Michael remained in his corner seat, occasionally exchanging messages with Keith. So far, no one had approached him, though he'd noticed a few double takes from passing spectators. During the third quarter, something changed. A middle-aged man a few rows down kept glancing back at Michael, then leaning to whisper to his wife. Soon after, a teenage boy climbed the bleachers and sat nearby, sneaking obvious looks while typing on his phone. On the court, the game intensified. Wilson High adjusted their defense to double-team Jamal whenever he touched the ball. Instead of forcing shots as he might have done previously, Jamal calmly found open teammates. When Wilson pulled ahead by 4 points with 6 minutes remaining, Laney responded with poise, running the offensive sets they'd practiced. Michael leaned forward, completely absorbed in the game, when Jamal made a perfect no-look pass that led to an easy basket, a move they'd specifically worked on in practice. Michael couldn't help but clap and call out, "Good vision, Jamal." The sound of his voice carried in a momentary lull. Several heads turned, the murmuring around him increased. Michael pulled his cap lower and considered leaving, but the game was too close, too important. As the final minute approached with the score tied 58-58, Michael noticed a small crowd gathering at the bottom of his section. People with phones, raised, not watching the game but looking in his direction. Word was spreading. On the court, Wilson High had possession. Their point guard drove toward the basket but was met by solid Laney defense. The shot clock wound down, forcing a desperate three-point attempt that bounced off the rim. Jamal secured the rebound and immediately pushed the ball up court. With 12 seconds left, Coach Bryant signaled for a timeout. As the Laney players huddled around their coach, Jamal glanced up toward Michael's seat. Even from a distance, their eyes connected briefly. Michael gave a small nod, and Jamal returned, "It." When play resumed, everyone in the gym knew Jamal would likely take the final shot. Wilson's defense collapsed around him as he dribbled at the top of the key. The clock ticked down. 10 seconds. 8, 7. Instead of forcing his way through the defenders, Jamal executed a perfect head fake, drawing 2 defenders before passing to Rodriguez, who stood unguarded at the three-point line. Rodriguez's shot arced high, hanging in the air as the buzzer sounded. Swish. The Laney section erupted. Players rushed from the bench to surround Rodriguez, but it was Jamal who reached him first, lifting the smaller player in celebration. Coach Bryant punched the air, then quickly composed himself to shake hands with the opposing coach. Michael stood to applaud, genuinely proud of what he'd witnessed. The team's growth was evident, not just in the win, but in how they'd achieved it, with trust and teamwork. As the celebration continued on the court, the whispers around Michael grew louder. A child pointed directly at him, tugging his father's sleeve. A woman nearby was recording video on her phone, the camera clearly aimed at Michael rather than the victorious team below. "It's him, isn't it?" someone said loudly. Michael knew his cover was blown. He texted Keith, "Ready for pickup. Things getting attention." As he made his way down the bleachers, a small crowd began to follow. Michael kept moving, offering polite nods, but not stopping. His goal was to reach the exit before the situation escalated into the kind of scene he'd been hoping to avoid. He was halfway to the door when Jamal spotted him leaving. The boy broke away from his celebrating teammates and jogged over. "Mr. Mike, we did it! Did you see Rodriguez's shot?" Michael smiled. "Couldn't have drawn it up better. Great pass, by the way. I remembered what you said about trusting my teammates," Jamal replied, breathless with excitement. "Coach wants to know if you can come to the team bus before we leave." Michael hesitated, aware of the growing attention around them. Already, phones were raised, capturing the interaction. "I should probably go, Jamal. This is your team's moment." Jamal looked confused, then glanced around, suddenly noticing the gathering crowd. His expression shifted as understanding dawned. "Wait, are you—" he began, looking more closely at Michael's face, then at the people recording. "Them." Before Jamal could finish his question, Coach Bryant appeared, putting a protective arm around his player's shoulders. "Great game, Jamal," he said, then turned to Michael. "Thanks for coming, Mr. Jordan. Meant a lot to the team." The coach's deliberate use of his surname confirmed what Jamal was beginning to suspect. The boy's eyes widened. "You're Michael Jordan?" Jamal asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Michael Jordan?" The gathering crowd had grown larger. Michael knew he had only moments before the situation became unmanageable. "We'll talk at Monday's practice," he promised Jamal. "You played great today. Be proud." With that, Michael turned and moved quickly toward the exit, pulling his phone from his pocket to check Keith's response. Behind him, he could hear the rising excitement as word spread through the gymnasium. Outside in the cool evening air, Michael spotted Keith waiting with the car. As he slid into the passenger seat, he couldn't help but smile. "Covers blown?" Keith asked, pulling away from the curb. "Completely," Michael confirmed. "But it was worth it." In the rearview mirror, he could see people spilling out of the gymnasium doors, phones raised. But his thoughts weren't on them. They were on Jamal's face in that moment of recognition. The look of disbelief transforming into something more complex: respect, wonder, and a newfound understanding of the connection they'd built. By Saturday morning, Michael's unexplained appearance at a high school basketball game had made headlines. Sports networks were running the shaky phone footage showing him in the stands, while social media buzzed with speculation about why the basketball legend was quietly attending a regional tournament game in North Carolina. Michael ignored the notifications flooding his phone and focused instead on a text from Coach Bryant. "Team is buzzing. Next game, Monday 4 p.m. at Hoggard High. No pressure, but doors are always open for our special assistant coach." He smiled at the message, but didn't reply immediately. The anonymity he'd briefly enjoyed was gone, and he needed to decide what that meant for his involvement with the team. After breakfast, he called his business manager to handle the media inquiries piling up. "Just say I was visiting my old school, nothing more," he instructed. "Keep it simple." Later that afternoon, Michael's phone rang with a call from an unfamiliar number. Normally, he would ignore it, but something made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Jordan?" It was Principal Wilson's voice, sounding slightly flustered. "This is Darlene Wilson, from Laney High School." "Principal Wilson," Michael acknowledged, curious about this call. Well, I owe you an apology," she said. "I had no idea who you really were during your visit. I've been receiving calls all morning from media, alumni, the superintendent, everyone wanting to know about your time at our school this week." Michael chuckled. No apology necessary. It was refreshing to be treated normally for a change. "The superintendent is particularly interested in your work with our basketball team," she continued. "Coach Bryant says you've been instrumental in their improvement. We were hoping, that is, if you're willing, perhaps you might consider continuing to help through the tournament?" Michael considered this. His original plan for a quiet, nostalgic visit had evolved into something much more meaningful than he'd anticipated. "The team's working hard," he said. "I'd like to see them through the tournament if I can." Principal Wilson's relief was audible. "That's wonderful news. I'll let Coach Bryant know. And Mr. Jordan? Thank you for being so gracious about my oversight." After ending the call, Michael sat on the hotel balcony, gazing out at the Wilmington coastline. The weekend stretched before him, surprisingly empty for a man whose calendar was typically booked months in advance. He found himself looking forward to Monday's game more than the business meetings awaiting him back home. On Monday afternoon, the scene at Hoggard High School was dramatically different from Friday's game. The parking lot was full 2 hours before tip-off. News vans lined the street. When Michael arrived, security personnel immediately escorted him through a side entrance to avoid the growing crowd. Inside the coach's office, he found Coach Bryant, reviewing game footage with his assistant. "Quite the turnout," Michael observed. Coach Bryant looked up with a wry smile. Ticket sales broke the school record within an hour of opening. Apparently, people really want to see Laney High's new assistant coach. "Sorry about that. Not exactly what you needed before a big game." "Are you kidding?" Coach Bryant laughed. "The boys are walking 10 feet tall. But there's a flip side. The pressure's enormous now. Everyone's expecting a show." Michael nodded understanding. "Where are they now?" "Locker room, trying to stay calm, but they're pretty amped up." Michael followed Coach Bryant to the locker room, where the players sat in an unusual silence, each lost in thought. When Michael entered, heads snapped up. Jamal stood immediately. "Mr. Sir," he stammered. Michael waved a hand. "Mike is still fine, Jamal." The tension broke as several players laughed nervously. Michael looked around the room, seeing the mixture of excitement and anxiety on their young faces. "So," he said casually, "word got out. More nervous laughter." "Pretty crazy weekend," Michael continued. "Phone won't stop ringing. Reporters asking why Michael Jordan is coaching a high school team in North Carolina." He paused. "I kept thinking about what to tell them." The players waited, silent. "Truth is, I came back to Laney looking for something. Wasn't sure what, exactly, but watching. You guys these past few days, I remembered what basketball felt like before the fame, before the business. The pure joy of improvement. the satisfaction of seeing hard work pay off. He moved to the center of the room. Today's game is going to be different. That gym is packed. People with cameras, phones, expectations. They're not here to see you. They're here to see me. The players nodded, understanding. So here's what we're going to do, Michael continued. We're going to flip the script. I'll be sitting in the stands. All eyes on me. Meanwhile, you'll be on that court, showing everyone that Laney basketball isn't about who's watching, it's about who's playing. Coach Bryant stepped forward. Mr. Jordan and I discussed this. We think the attention could work for us or against us. It's your choice how you use it. Jamal looked at his teammates. Then, back at Michael. We won't let you down, sir. I know you won't, Michael replied. Remember what we've worked on. Trust each other. Play with joy. The rest will take care of itself. As game time approached, the gymnasium filled beyond capacity. Michael took a seat behind the Laney bench, accompanied by security personnel. Smartphones turned in his direction. Immediately, but he kept his attention focused on the court where the players were warming up. When the game began, it was immediately clear that Laney faced a formidable opponent. Hoggard High had a significant height advantage and a disciplined defense that disrupted Laney's offensive rhythm. By halftime, Laney trailed by 11 points. In the locker room, Coach Bryant remained calm as he diagrammed adjustments. The players listened intently, but their confidence was visibly shaken. Michael, who had joined them at Coach Bryant's invitation, waited until the tactical discussion finished before speaking. You know what I see when I look at your faces right now? He asked. I see doubt. I understand that. But doubt is just fear disguised as thinking. He walked slowly around the room, making eye contact with each player. When I was your age, playing for this same school, I faced moments just like this. Games where nothing worked, where the other team seemed better, where the hole seemed too deep to climb out of. He stopped in front of Jamal. That's when you have a choice. Let the doubt win, or remember who you are and why you play. As the YV players returned to the court for the second half, Michael remained in the locker room with Coach Bryant. They're good kids, the coach said, but they're up against a tough team and a circus atmosphere. Michael nodded. Let's see what they're made of. When they rejoined the game, they found Principal Wilson waiting by the bench, her expression concerned. The superintendent's here, she whispered. He's hoping to speak with you after the game, Mr. Jordan. Michael nodded politely, but kept his attention on the court. The third quarter was about to begin, and with it, the true test of everything he'd tried to teach these young players about: perseverance, teamwork, and performing under pressure. The third quarter began with Laney showing renewed energy. Jamal orchestrated the offense with calm authority, finding teammates in the spots they'd practiced. Gradually, they chipped away at Hoggard's lead. When Rodriguez hit a three-pointer to cut the deficit to 4 points, the Laney supporters erupted in cheers. Michael watched intently from his seat, offering occasional comments to Coach Bryant during timeouts, but otherwise letting the team find their own rhythm. He noticed Principal Wilson nearby, flanked by a distinguished-looking man he assumed was the superintendent, both watching him as much as the game. As the fourth quarter began with the score tied at 60, Michael's phone vibrated. He ignored it initially, but when it buzzed repeatedly, he finally checked the screen. The series of urgent messages made his heart sink. MJ, it's Keith. Your sister's been in an accident. Nothing life-threatening, but she's asking for you. Hospital in Charlotte. Call ASAP. Michael's mind raced. Charlotte was over 3 hours away. His sister had always been there for him throughout his career. There was no question what he needed to do. He leaned toward Coach Bryant during a free throw. Family emergency. Need to leave. Coach Bryant nodded, understanding. Go. We'll handle this. Michael slipped a note to Principal Wilson explaining the situation, then made his way toward a side exit where Keith was waiting with the car. As he left, he cast one final glance at the court, where Jamal was helping a teammate up after a hard play. The boy's growth as a leader was evident in that simple gesture of solidarity. The drive to Charlotte passed in tense silence. Michael's thoughts alternated between concern for his sister and the team he'd left behind. When they finally reached the hospital, he found his sister in stable condition. A car accident had left her with a broken arm and mild concussion, but doctors assured him she would recover fully. "You didn't have to rush all the way here," she scolded gently from her hospital bed. "Of course I did," Michael replied, holding her uninjured hand. "Family comes first." He stayed by her side until she fell asleep, then stepped into the hallway to check his phone. There were several missed calls from Coach Bryant and a single text. "Tough loss, 78-73. Boys played their hearts out. Call when you can." Michael sighed, feeling a pang of disappointment for the team. He started to call back, then paused, deciding it could wait until morning. The night nurse assured him his sister was stable, so he found an uncomfortable chair in the waiting room and settled in for the night. The next morning, after confirming his sister would be released later that day and had family nearby to help with her recovery, Michael finally called Coach Bryant. "How are they taking it?" he asked after hearing the details of the game's final minutes. "Hard," Coach Bryant admitted. "Not just the loss. They're worried about why you left. Rumors are flying. Some think you got bored or disappointed with them." Michael winced. "That couldn't be further from the truth. It was a family emergency." "I told them that, but..." Coach Bryant hesitated. "They're teenagers. They take things personally." "I'll be back tomorrow," Michael promised. Morning practice, 8 a.m. We still have one more chance. Consolation bracket. Win the next 2 games, and we qualify for state as the 3rd seed. After ending the call, Michael arranged for his sister's care and headed back to Wilmington with Keith. He arrived at his hotel late that night, exhausted but determined to make things right with the team. The next morning, Michael reached Laney High early, only to find the gymnasium empty. He checked his watch. 7:45 a.m., definitely the right time. He tried calling Coach Bryant, but got no answer. Confused, he walked to the main office, where Ms. Daniels greeted him with her usual smile, though he noticed it seemed strained. "Morning, Mr. Jordan. Looking for the team?" "Practice was supposed to start at 8, he confirmed. "Oh," she said, looking uncomfortable. "I believe there was a change. Principal Wilson might know more. She's in her office." Michael knocked on Principal Wilson's door and was immediately invited in. She looked up from her computer, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Jordan, I wasn't expecting to see you this morning." "I'm looking for the basketball team. Coach Bryant said practice was at 8. Principal Wilson folded her hands on her desk. "There's been a change of plans. The team is practicing at Trask Middle School today. Their gymnasium was available, and Coach Bryant thought..." She paused, clearly choosing her words carefully, "that a change of scenery might help. The players refocus after yesterday's disappointment." Michael wasn't convinced. "Is that the only reason?" Principal Wilson sighed. The media presence has been challenging. Reporters have been camped outside the school since yesterday. The superintendent felt it best to move practice somewhere quieter. I see. Michael understood the subtext. His presence had created complications, and no one thought to tell me. Coach Bryant mentioned you had a family emergency. We weren't sure when you'd return. She hesitated, then added, "The superintendent has some concerns about the attention your involvement has generated. He's worried it might distract from the educational environment." Michael nodded slowly. "I understand, but I made a commitment to these players." "No one doubts your intentions," Principal Wilson assured him. "It's just a matter of finding the right balance." "Where exactly is this practice happening?" Principal Wilson wrote down the address. "The boys would certainly be thrilled to see you. They took yesterday's loss hard." After leaving the office, Michael stood in the empty hallway, reading between the lines of what Principal Wilson had said. The message was clear. His presence, while valuable to the team, had created a spectacle that school administrators were struggling to manage. As he walked back to his car, Michael spotted a small group of reporters near the school entrance. One recognized him and called out, but Michael kept walking, his mind on the players. Practicing across town without him, particularly Jamal, who would surely be taking the loss. Hardest of all. This wasn't how he'd imagined his quiet return to Laney would unfold. What had begun as a personal journey had become a media circus, and now the very connection he'd come seeking was in jeopardy. Keith was waiting by the car. "To the middle school?" Michael nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Yes. I made these kids a promise." Trask Middle School's gymnasium was considerably smaller than Laney's, with lower ceilings and outdated equipment. When Michael walked in, practice was already underway. Coach Bryant was running the team through defensive rotations, his voice echoing sharply against the walls. The players noticed Michael's arrival before their coach did. A noticeable ripple of surprise moved through the team, with drills momentarily faltering as heads turned. Coach Bryant followed their gaze and nodded briefly to Michael before refocusing the team. "Eyes here, Rodriguez, you're jumping too early on the help defense. Williams, wider stance. Let's run it again." Michael took a seat on the bottom row of bleachers, content to observe without interrupting. He could read the team's body language clearly. They were going through the motions, but the energy and focus from previous practices was missing. Jamal, in particular, seemed withdrawn, his usual intensity replaced by mechanical movements. When Coach Bryant finally called for a water break, Jamal approached Michael while the other players gathered around the cooler. "You came back," he said simply. "I said I would," Michael replied. "I'm sorry about yesterday. My sister was in an accident." Jamal's expression softened. "Is she okay?" "She will be. Broken arm, some bruises." Michael shifted on the bench. "Coach Bryant told me about the game. Said you guys played hard." Jamal looked away. "Not hard enough." "Sometimes it's like that. You give everything and still come up short." "We thought," Jamal hesitated. "Some guys thought maybe you left because you were disappointed in us, that we weren't worth your time anymore." Michael shook his head firmly. "That's not it at all. Family emergency, nothing more." "Coach told us that, but..." Jamal shrugged. "It's been crazy. Reporters outside school, everyone talking about us, all these expectations suddenly." "And you feel the pressure," Michael finished for him. "Yeah." Jamal bounced a basketball absently. "Before you showed up, nobody cared if we won or lost. Now it's like the whole world is watching. Not the whole world, Michael said with a small smile. But I get it. Spotlight changes things. Coach Bryant called the players back to the court. Jamal lingered a moment longer. We still have a chance to make state if we win the next 2 games, he said. First one's tomorrow afternoon. I know. I'll be there. Jamal nodded and jogged back to his teammates. Coach Bryant approached Michael. Glad you made it, he said. Sorry about the location change. Principal Wilson thought. I spoke with her, Michael interrupted. I understand the concerns, but I told these kids I'd see them through the tournament. Coach Bryant's relief was visible. That means a lot to them. More than they might admit right now. He lowered his voice. Especially Jamal. He took yesterday's loss personally. Missed a crucial free throw in the final minute. Mind if I work with them for a bit? They're all yours. Michael joined the team on the court, feeling their uncertain eyes on him. He kept his approach simple, focusing first on rebuilding their confidence through basic drills executed with precision. Gradually, the players' movements became more fluid, their communication more natural. By the time he introduced pressure scenarios, simulating end-of-game situations with heightened stakes, they were responding with renewed focus. Remember, Michael told them during a huddle, pressure is just opportunity in disguise. Everyone feels it. Champions use it. After practice, he pulled Jamal aside for some additional free throw work, having him shoot, while Michael created distractions, talking, waving his arms, even playfully heckling. It was the same technique his own coaches had used to prepare him for hostile crowds. Block it all out, Michael instructed. Find your routine and trust it. The rim doesn't move, no matter who's watching. As they were finishing up, Principal Tanpusier Wilson appeared at the gymnasium door, accompanied by a distinguished man in an expensive suit, whom Michael assumed was the superintendent. They observed silently for several minutes before approaching. Mr. Jordan, Principal Wilson began, this is Superintendent Harris. He's been eager to meet you. The superintendent extended his hand. An honor, Mr. Jordan. Your contribution to basketball history is unparalleled. Thank you, Michael replied simply, already sensing the conversation's direction. I understand you've been working with our team, the superintendent continued. The players clearly benefit from your expertise. However, we're concerned about the disruption your presence has caused. Michael nodded. Principal Wilson mentioned that. I understand your concerns. We're simply trying to maintain an environment focused on education, Superintendent Harris explained. The media attention has been overwhelming. Michael glanced at Jamal, who was pretending not to listen while collecting basketballs nearby. Achi Tarfoy made a commitment to these players, he said firmly. Their next game is tomorrow, with a potential state qualifier after that. I intend to be there for both. The superintendent seemed ready to object, but Principal Wilson spoke first. Perhaps we can find a compromise. What if Mr. Jordan attends as a spectator rather than joining the bench? We could arrange discreet seating, minimize the spectacle. Superintendent Harris considered this. That might work, and perhaps limit media access? No interviews on school property? I'm fine with that, Michael agreed, relieved to find a solution that would allow him to keep his promise to the team. After the administrators departed, looking satisfied with the arrangement, Jamal approached. Everything okay? Fine, Michael assured him. Just working out some details for tomorrow's game. Jamal hesitated, then asked the question clearly weighing on him. Will you be there?" "Front row," Michael promised, "but I'll be watching from the stands, not the bench. School rules." Jamal nodded, understanding more than he let on. "As long as you're there." The next day, Michael arrived at Clemens High School, where the consolation bracket games were being held. As arranged, security escorted him to a reserved section of seating near the Laney bench, but distinctly separate. Media had been restricted to a designated area, and while photographers' lenses tracked his every move, the controlled environment was a significant improvement over the chaos of the previous game. Laney's opponent was a disciplined team from Winston-Salem with a deliberate, grinding style of play. The game quickly developed into a defensive battle, with points hard to come by for both sides. By halftime, Laney clung to a 3-point lead, 24-21. In the locker room, Coach Bryant delivered tactical adjustments while occasionally glancing toward the door, perhaps half expecting Michael to appear. But Michael kept his word, remaining in the stands when play resumed. As the second half progressed, Laney's lead evaporated. With 4 minutes remaining, they trailed by 5 points. The players looked toward the bench during a timeout, their expressions seeking direction, certainty. From his seat, Michael caught Jamal's eye and gave a single, subtle nod. It was all he could offer from a distance, a reminder of everything they'd practiced, everything they'd discussed about performing under pressure. Something shifted in Jamal's demeanor. When play resumed, he gathered his teammates for a brief huddle before taking the court. Whatever he said seemed to ignite them. Their defensive intensity doubled. Their offensive execution sharpened. With 1 minute remaining, Laney had closed the gap to just 1 point. The Winston-Salem team called timeout, setting up a final play. As both teams returned to the court, Michael leaned forward in his seat, recognizing the critical moment upon them. This wasn't just about winning a basketball game anymore. It was about young men facing pressure and discovering who they were in that crucial moment. The gymnasium fell into that peculiar hush that accompanies defining moments in sports. When collective breath is held, when time seems to slow. Winston-Salem inbounded the ball, working it deliberately around the perimeter as precious seconds ticked away. Laney's defense, positioned exactly as they had practiced, rotated with newfound precision. When Winston-Salem's point guard attempted to drive the lane, he met a perfectly timed help defense from Williams, forcing an off-balance shot that bounced harmlessly off the rim. Jamal secured the rebound and immediately pushed the ball up court. No timeout, no hesitation, just the fluid, instinctive basketball. Michael had been encouraging. With 12 seconds remaining, Laney had possession, down by 1 point. From his seat, Michael watched Jamal orchestrate the offense, seemingly immune to the pressure that had once disrupted his game. The defense collapsed around him as he drove toward the basket, just as Michael had predicted they would. Without forcing the issue, Jamal kicked the ball out to Rodriguez, wide open on the wing. Rodriguez's three-point attempt seemed to hang in the air forever before dropping cleanly through the net. The Laney supporters erupted as the final buzzer sounded. Laney 58, Winston-Salem 56. As the team celebrated at center court, Jamal broke away from the group, scanning the stands, until he located Michael. Their eyes met across the distance, and Jamal gave a small salute, acknowledgement of the lessons that had carried them through. Michael returned the gesture, feeling a deep satisfaction that transcended the victory itself. He watched the celebration for a moment longer, then slipped out a side exit to avoid disrupting the team's moment with a media frenzy. Back at his hotel that evening, Michael received a call from Coach Bryant. Hell of a game, the coach said, without preamble. That was the team we've been trying to build all season. They found something important today, Michael agreed. Confidence in each other. One more to go. Hampton High tomorrow at 5:00. Win, and we're state-bound. Coach Bryant paused. The boys were asking if you'd be at practice in the morning. Michael hesitated, thinking of the superintendent's concerns. What about the school administration? I spoke with Principal Wilson. She suggested the practice gym at the community college. No media, no distractions, just basketball. The next morning, Michael met the team at the community college facility. The atmosphere was notably lighter than the previous practice, but still focused. The players moved with renewed purpose, building on the confidence gained from their victory. Michael worked primarily with Jamal on decision-making in crucial moments, reinforcing the choices he'd made in yesterday's game. You trusted your teammate when it mattered most, he told the young player. That's leadership. Jamal nodded thoughtfully. It felt different, like time slowed down and I could see everything more clearly. That's what happens when you stop overthinking and trust your instincts. Michael demonstrated a subtle head fake. Basketball intelligence isn't calculated, it's felt. Coach Bryant joined them, checking his watch. We should wrap up. Bus leaves for Hampton at 2:30. I'll meet you there, Michael told them. Same arrangement as yesterday. As the players gathered their gear, Coach Bryant pulled Michael aside. There's something you should know. Hampton's coach was Dean Carter's assistant at UNC for 6 years. Michael raised an eyebrow, recognizing the name of his former college coach. Small world. He's good, very good. Their defense will be ready for what we showed yesterday. Then we'll show them something new, Michael replied, with the competitive gleam that had defined his career. After practice, Michael returned to his hotel to review Hampton game footage that Coach Bryant had shared. He was so absorbed in analysis that he almost missed a call from Principal Wilson. Mr. Jordan, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. Principal Wilson, what can I do for you? I wanted to personally thank you for respecting our arrangements yesterday. The superintendent was pleased with how everything was handled. Happy to help, Michael replied. One more game to go. About that, she hesitated. The superintendent and I have been discussing your involvement, and we've had a change of heart. Your mentorship has clearly been transformative for our players. We believe you should be with the team on the bench for this final game, if you're willing. Michael was surprised by the reversal. What about the media concerns? We'll manage them, she said decisively. Some things are more important. When Michael arrived at Hampton High that evening, the scene was even more chaotic than previous. Games. Word had spread about his involvement with Laney, drawing a capacity crowd and media from across the state. As arranged, security escorted him to the Laney locker room where the team was preparing. His entrance brought the pre-game conversations to an immediate halt. Coach Bryant stepped forward. Change of plans, he announced. Mr. Jordan will be joining us on the bench tonight. The players' reactions ranged from surprised grins to solemn nods of appreciation. Jamal, lacing up his shoes in the corner, simply said, "About time." Hampton proved to be every bit the formidable opponent Coach Bryant had described. Their disciplined defense disrupted Laney's rhythm, while their offense executed with machine-like efficiency. By halftime, Laney trailed by 12 points. In the locker room, Coach Bryant outlined tactical adjustments, then turned to Michael. Anything to add? Michael stepped to the center of the room. You're playing like you're afraid to lose. He told them bluntly, "That's not the team I've been working with." He looked at each player in turn. Out there is a team that thinks they've got you figured out. They think they know what you're capable of. They're wrong. He pointed to the door leading back to the court. Show them who you really are. The third quarter began with Laney implementing a defensive adjustment Michael had suggested, a modified trap that forced Hampton's guards away from their preferred spots. The strategy yielded immediate results, creating turnovers that Laney converted into quick points. Offensively, Jamal orchestrated with a newfound patience, finding the seams in Hampton's previously impenetrable defense. The lead gradually shrank. 12 points, then 8, then 5. As the fourth quarter began with Laney down by just 3 points, Michael noticed a subtle shift in the opposing coach's demeanor. The first signs of concern. Hampton called a timeout to adjust, but Laney had found their rhythm and confidence. With 1 minute remaining, the score was tied at 64. Hampton had possession, working the ball methodically. Their center set a screen for their leading scorer, who drove toward the basket. Williams, applying the defensive principle Michael had emphasized in practice, slid over to take a charge. The referee's whistle blew, arm extended toward Laney's. Basket. Offensive foul. Laney's possession. 30 seconds remaining. Coach Bryant started to call a timeout, then caught Michael's subtle head shake and reconsidered. Let them play. Trust them. Jamal brought the ball up court. The defense focused intently on him. The same scenario as yesterday's game seemed to be, unfolding. All eyes on the star player, expecting him to take the decisive shot. Instead, Jamal executed a perfect pick-and-roll with Thomas, drawing 2 defenders before delivering a bounce pass that led to an uncontested layup. Hampton hurried to inbound, but with only 3 seconds remaining, their desperate half-court heave fell short. The buzzer sounded. Laney, 66. Hampton, 64. As his teammates celebrated wildly around him, Jamal turned toward the bench, where Michael and Coach Bryant stood side by side. The boy's face reflected not just the joy of victory, but the deeper satisfaction of growth realized. In that moment, as the noise of the crowd washed over them, Michael felt something unexpected, a connection to his own past, to the hungry, determined teenager he'd once been on this same journey. He had come to Laney seeking his roots, but had found something more valuable. The chance to see his legacy extended through these young players, who now carried forward the lessons of dedication, perseverance, and excellence he had embodied. Coach Bryant turned to him, hand extended. "Thank you for this," he said simply. Michael shook it firmly. "My pleasure, Coach. Truly." As the celebration continued around them, Principal Wilson approached, accompanied by the superintendent and several school board members. "Mr. Jordan," the superintendent began with a wide smile, "I believe we need to discuss your continued involvement with our basketball program." Michael glanced at the celebrating team, particularly at Jamal, who was being interviewed by a local reporter, handling the attention with newfound poise. "I'd like that," he replied sincerely. "I'd like that very much." 2 days later, Michael sat in Principal Wilson's office reviewing the plan for Laney's first-round state tournament game. The media attention had intensified beyond anyone's expectations, with national sports networks now covering the story of Michael Jordan's unexpected coaching role at his alma mater. ESPN wants to broadcast the game, Principal Wilson explained, sliding a document across her desk. They're requesting sideline access, pre-game interviews, the works. Michael skimmed the proposal. "What do you think?" "Honestly, it's overwhelming," she admitted. "But it's also an incredible opportunity for our students, not just the basketball players. Our media production class could shadow the broadcast team. Our journalism students could gain real-world experience." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "As long as the focus stays on the team, not me." "That's the challenge," Principal Wilson agreed. "The superintendent is concerned about maintaining an educational environment amid all this attention." "I understand," Michael said. "Let me talk to Coach Bryant and the team. It should be their decision, too." Later that afternoon, Michael met with the players in the locker room. Their excitement at having qualified for the state tournament was tempered by awareness of the growing spectacle surrounding them. "I want your honest opinions," Michael told them. "This attention, the cameras, the interviews, the expectations, it's a lot. If it's too much, I can step back. Watch from the stands. Keep working with you in private practices." The players exchanged glances. Finally, Jamal spoke up. "A month ago, we were just another team with a losing record. Nobody cared if we won or lost. Now we're heading to state, and suddenly everyone wants to know our names." He looked around at his teammates. "It's intense, but isn't this what we've been working toward? To play on the big stage?" Rodriguez nodded. "My little brother's friends all want his autograph now because he's related to someone on the team. It's crazy, but kind of awesome too." Williams, typically quiet, added, "My dad told me pressure is just a privilege not everyone gets to experience." Michael smiled at the familiar wisdom. "Your dad's right. Pressure means what you're doing matters." Coach Bryant, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "My concern isn't the attention. It's making sure you guys are ready for the level of competition at state. These teams are on another level from what we've faced." Michael turned to him. "When's our first game?" "Saturday, 2:00 p.m. Against East Forsyth. They're the second seed overall. Undefeated this season." A murmur went through the team. East Forsyth's dominance was well known in high school basketball circles throughout the state. "Good," Michael said simply. "The bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity." For the next 3 days, practice intensity reached new heights. Michael worked closely with Coach Bryant to implement advanced strategies, pushing the players to levels of performance they hadn't known they could achieve. The community college continued to provide their practice facility, maintaining the IDOC team's privacy as they prepared. On the morning of the game, Michael met the team for a light shoot-around. The players were quiet, focused, each processing the moment in their own way. As they finished, Michael gathered them at center court. "When I played in big games," he told them, "I always reminded myself that the court dimensions never change. The basket is still 10 feet high. The ball is still the same size. All that changes is the noise around you." He looked at each player in turn. "Remember who you are and what got you here. The rest is just noise." The state tournament was being held at the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Winston-Salem. When the Laney team bus arrived, they were greeted by a scene none of them had experienced before. Media lined up behind barriers, cameras flashing, fans holding signs. Inside the players' tunnel, Coach Bryant reviewed final instructions while the team prepared to take the court for warm-ups. Michael stood slightly apart, letting the coach handle the pre-game routine while offering quiet words of encouragement to players as they stretched. Jamal approached him, basketball tucked under his arm. "Nervous?" Michael asked. "A little," Jamal admitted. "But good nervous. Ready nervous." Michael nodded approvingly. Perfect place to be. When the team took the court for warm-ups, the crowd reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The stands were packed, with a significant Laney contingent making the trip to support their suddenly famous team. ESPN cameras tracked their movements, occasionally focusing on Michael at the edge of the court. East Forsyth emerged from the opposite tunnel, their players noticeably larger and more physically imposing than Laney's. Their warm-up routine displayed the precision and confidence of a team accustomed to dominance. In the locker room before tip-off, Coach Bryant kept his tactical instructions brief. "They're bigger, but we're faster. They expect to win. We need to show them early that we belong here." Michael added, "First 5 minutes, match their intensity. Don't get overwhelmed by the moment. Breathe. Execute. Trust each other." When the game began, the difference in caliber was immediately apparent. East Forsyth's defense was suffocating, their offense polished. Laney struggled to find rhythm, falling behind 15-6 in the first quarter. During a timeout, Coach Bryant adjusted the defensive alignment while Michael pulled Jamal aside. "They're playing exactly how we expected," he said calmly. "Stick to the plan. Keep pressure on. Their guards, the shots, will start falling." Gradually, Laney found their footing. Rodriguez hit a three-pointer. Williams made a steal that led to a fast break basket. The deficit remained, but the team's confidence grew. With each small success, by halftime, they had closed the gap to 5 points. East Forsyth 32, Laney 27. In the locker room, Coach Bryant outlined further adjustments. "Their center's getting tired. He's not running the floor as well. Push the pace." Michael added strategic insights, focusing particularly on defensive positioning. "They're running the same play for their shooter coming off the double screen. Williams, you're anticipating? Well, trust your instincts there." The third quarter became a battle of wills. East Forsyth, unaccustomed to being challenged, responded with increased physical play. When Jamal was knocked hard to the floor after a drive to the basket, tension filled the arena. He rose slowly, waving off concern, but Michael could see the fire in his eyes, not anger, but determination. On the next possession, Jamal executed a perfect crossover that left his defender off balance, then delivered a no-look pass to Thomas for an emphatic dunk. The Laney section erupted, the momentum noticeably shifting. By the start of the fourth quarter, the game was tied at 48. The East Forsyth coach called AE timeout, his frustration evident as he addressed his team. On the Laney bench, Coach Bryant reviewed defensive assignments while Michael spoke quietly to Jamal. 10 minutes of basketball left, he said. Everything we've worked on comes down to this. No regrets. Jamal nodded, eyes focused on the court. No regrets. The final quarter unfolded with the intensity of a championship game. Neither team could establish more than a 3-point advantage. With 1 minute remaining, East Forsyth led 60-59. Laney's defense forced a shot clock violation, giving them possession with 35 seconds left. Coach Bryant called timeout to set up the final play. In the huddle, he outlined the options, then looked at Michael, who nodded agreement. Jamal, Coach Bryant said, we're putting the ball in your hands. Read the defense. Trust what you see. The players returned to the court, the tension palpable. Jamal brought the ball up court, the defense collapsing around him as the clock wound down. 20 seconds. 15. 10. East Forsyth sent a double team, exactly as Michael had predicted they would. Jamal remained poised, finding Rodriguez open on the wing. Instead of taking the shot, Rodriguez made one more pass to Williams in the IE-ha corner. The shot arced through the air as the buzzer sounded. The gymnasium fell silent for that suspended moment before the ball kissed the backboard and dropped through the net. Laney, 62. East Forsyth, 60. The Laney bench exploded in celebration, players rushing the court to surround Williams. Coach Bryant pumped his fist in triumph, then turned to embrace Michael, both men caught in the emotion of the moment. Cameras captured it all: the celebration, the stunned East Forsyth players, the jubilant Laney supporters. But the most meaningful image, one that would appear on sports websites nationwide the following day, showed Jamal in the midst of celebration, looking back toward the bench where Michael stood, their eyes meeting in shared understanding of the journey they had taken together. In that moment of victory, with noise swirling around them and the future suddenly bright with possibility, the teacher and student connected across the distance, not as legend and admirer, but as two competitors who understood the true meaning of perseverance, growth, and excellence. The final buzzer had sounded, but their story was far from over. The days following Laney's stunning victory over East Forsyth passed in a whirlwind. The team's unexpected triumph became national news, with sports analysts dissecting the game and marveling at the transformation of a previously unremarkable high school squad under Michael Jordan's guidance. Though Laney would eventually lose, in the state semifinals to the eventual champions, their run was celebrated as one of the most inspiring stories in high school basketball that year. For the players, especially Jamal and his fellow seniors, the experience had been life-changing. 1. Week after the tournament's conclusion, Principal Wilson organized a special assembly to honor the team. The entire student body packed into the gymnasium, which had been decorated with blue and gold streamers. A new banner commemorating their state tournament appearance hung beside the decades-old championship flags. As students and faculty settled into their seats, Principal Wilson approached the microphone at center court. "Good morning, Laney High School," she began, her voice echoing through the space. "Today, we gather to celebrate an extraordinary achievement by our basketball team, who showed us all what can be accomplished through dedication, teamwork, and perseverance." She gestured to the players seated in a row of chairs behind her, each wearing their game jerseys. These young men began their season facing challenges that might have discouraged less determined individuals. Instead, they embraced those challenges and turned them into opportunities for growth. Principal Wilson then introduced Coach Bryant, who spoke briefly about the season's journey. "Sometimes in life," he concluded, "the right person appears at exactly the right moment to help you find your path. For our team, that person was Michael Jordan." A murmur went through the crowd as Principal Wilson invited Michael to the microphone. He had deliberately kept a low profile since the tournament, allowing the players to receive the recognition they deserved. Now, dressed simply in slacks and a button-down shirt, he approached center court to enthusiastic applause. "Thank you," he began, waiting for the noise to subside. "When I first walked into Laney High School a few weeks ago, I wasn't looking for attention or recognition. I was looking for connection to my past, to the place that helped shape me into the person I became." He glanced at Principal Wilson with a small smile. "I didn't expect the school's principal to give me a tour without recognizing me. But that unexpected anonymity turned out to be a gift. It allowed me to rediscover something precious that sometimes gets lost in the noise of achievement and celebrity." the pure joy of the game. Michael turned toward the team. These players reminded me why basketball matters, not the trophies, or the contracts, or the fame, but the lessons learned through dedication to craft, the growth that comes from facing challenges head-on, the bonds formed through shared struggle and triumph. He focused particularly on Jamal. Leadership isn't about being the best player on the court. It's about making everyone around you better. These young men embraced that principle and transformed not just as players, but as people. Michael then addressed the wider student body. Not everyone plays basketball, but everyone faces moments that test their character and determination. These players have shown what's possible when you refuse to be defined by setbacks or limited by others' expectations. As Michael concluded his remarks, Principal Wilson returned to the microphone. "We have a special presentation to make today," she announced, gesturing to someone off stage. The superintendent stepped forward, carrying a framed jersey, number 23, with Jordan emblazoned across the back. "Michael," the superintendent said, "on behalf of Laney High School, we would like to present you with this token of our appreciation. Your jersey has hung in our trophy case for decades, but this new one symbolizes not just your past achievements, but your continuing legacy through the lives you've touched." Michael accepted the frame with genuine emotion, shaking hands with the superintendent as cameras flashed throughout the gymnasium. "There's one more thing," Principal Wilson added. "Coach Bryant and the team have prepared something special." Coach Bryant stepped forward. "Michael, the players wanted to express their gratitude in their own way. Jamal?" Jamal approached Michael carrying a large envelope. "Mr. Jordan, Mike," he began, his voice steady despite the gymnasium's hush. "You came to Laney looking for your past, but you gave us our future. Some of us, like me, were trying to carry everything on our shoulders. You taught us the strength of trusting others." He handed Michael the envelope. "This is from all of us." Michael opened it and removed a handmade card signed by every player. Attached to the card was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline read, "Sophomore, Jordan cut from varsity squad." Michael stared at the article, momentarily confused. It was from his own high school days, a painful memory that had ultimately fueled his determination. Inside the card was a handwritten note. "Thank you for showing us that setbacks can become setups for comebacks. P.S. Principal." Wilson knew who you were all along. She was the student reporter who wrote this article about you 47 years ago. She wanted you to have the gift of being unknown, even for a little while. Michael looked up in surprise, his eyes finding Principal Wilson across the court. She met his gaze with a small smile and a subtle wink. In that moment, the full circle of the journey struck him. The student reporter who had documented his early disappointment had become the principal who gave him the rare gift of anonymity, allowing him to reconnect with the pure essence of basketball and his own beginnings. The gymnasium erupted in applause as Michael embraced Jamal, then turned to acknowledge Principal Wilson with a nod of deep understanding and gratitude. No words were necessary. Between them, just the shared recognition of how paths cross and recross through life, creating opportunities for growth, redemption, and the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next. As the assembly concluded and students began filing out, Michael remained at center court, surrounded by players seeking final words of advice and encouragement. Jamal stood slightly apart, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. Principal Wilson approached him. "You did well, Mr. Taylor." "Thank you, Principal Wilson," Jamal replied. For everything. She smiled. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from unexpected teachers. Remember that when you're at UNC next fall. Jamal's eyes widened. How did you? The acceptance letter arrived this morning. Full basketball scholarship. She nodded toward Michael. I thought you might want to tell him yourself. As principal, Wilson walked away. Jamal looked toward Michael, who was still engaged with the younger players. The journey had come full circle indeed. Not just for Michael Jordan returning to his roots, but for Jamal Taylor taking the first steps toward his future, carrying forward the lessons of perseverance, leadership, and excellence that defined the legend who had once walked these same halls, faced these same doubts, and transformed them into greatness. Thanks for listening. So, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoyed Michael Jordan's heartwarming story of reconnection and mentorship, please hit that like button to help spread this message of kindness and perseverance to more viewers. And if you want to see more inspiring stories like this one, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. It's filled with more uplifting moments that will brighten your day. Remember, sometimes the greatest gifts come when we're not recognized for who we are, but for who we help others become. See you in the next video.